Hello, health champions. Greetings to you. How are you doing? Happy Saturday. I hope all is well. Yes, this is Dr. Babs here for a Wise Up weekend. We have a very important series to do today and tomorrow, and it's titled Nourishing Nutrition, Your Path to Health. So what is this all about? I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. You know, the month of September is Fruits and Veggie Month. It's also Whole Grains Month. So I couldn't miss the opportunity to have this conversation with you, to bring our communities together, to ensure that we are living at our finest through the nutrition that we eat. So there are a few things I'm going to highlight today. We're going to review just the current state of our nutrition plan. We're also going to have that discussion about what makes up a whole food plant-based nutrition and how to incorporate it. So stay tuned, tag your friends, and let's have this conversation together. I would love your engagement. So please, have your questions ready and let's make this interactive. So before we get started, just a quick introduction about myself, and we'll be back in a few. All right, welcome back. So again, this is Dr. Babs for our Wise Up weekend. We have a great topic for today and tomorrow. We'll be talking about just nutrition being our foundation. So for living at your finest, nutrition is one of the pillars for our lifestyle medicine approach, where we get to the root cause. And we're just going to focus on nutrition. All the other pillars can wait. We'll focus on nutrition this weekend. So again, these are the topics that we're going to review: the state of our current affairs in terms of our diet and what we're eating. Then we'll talk about what a whole food plant-based diet is and how we can incorporate it. But today, my focus is just really going to be about our current state of nutrition. So have you heard of the SAD diet, S-A-D? It's really, really sad. The recent data shows that this SAD diet, which is also known as a standard American diet, and you can see if you're not in America and you're in another country, does this apply to what you see day in, day out, where 90% of the calories are coming from processed foods, animal, dairy products, packaged foods, and then only 10% is coming from our veggies, our fruits, beans, nuts, and seeds. I mean, that is how sad it is, that because we're so fast-paced now that we're not eating God-made food, we're eating more of man-made food for conveniences. And unfortunately, that leads to a lot of chronic diseases that we're seeing today. Diseases that we have not even heard from in 100 years are coming up to the surface because of what we're eating. Diet has actually been shown, poor diet has been shown to be the number one reason for 80% of the lifestyle-related chronic diseases. So we need to be on alert. We need to speak to one another. We need to bring our family together and figure out how we can turn this around for our good. So there's a lot of studies, and let us start off with, what's the beef about meat? All right, so I had to ask this question because, our grandparents, great-grandparents, they were all eating meat. What was the deal? I mean, they were fine. They didn't have all the diseases that we have now. Well, the thing is, there's a lot of, as good as it is, it has high protein. There's no story about that. Yes, high protein, but it also has high saturated fat and cholesterol. And if you watched my video on cholesterol, our liver naturally makes cholesterol, but when we eat it in our diet, and unfortunately the beef that we're eating, we have no idea how it's raised, what it's eating, all the hormones and all the things that are in there that is different from what our grandparents and great-grandparents ate. So it's changed. And unfortunately, it raises what we call the IGF-1, which is a cancer promoter, and that just means insulin-like growth factor. So when that is increased in our body, it pretty much inhibits, it actually inhibits apoptosis, which means dying of old cells, but it stimulates proliferation. So any cell that just decides to divide and divide, that is what this IGF-1 does. So it's a cancer promoter. So the more beef that we eat, that we have no idea how it was raised, that's what happens, especially if we're eating processed meat. So like bacon, hot dogs, deli meats, all of that. Not only does it have high salt content, it is processed. And whenever it's changed from its original form, as you can imagine, a lot of things happen. Another thing with beef, the beef with meat, is that it has high level of what we call TMAO, which is trimethylamine N oxides. And this is linked to heart disease and cancer. So I'm not saying that I don't eat meat. I eat more chicken, and I'm very particular about where I get my chicken. I eat actually more fish, and I'm particular about salmon because of the omega-3. Again, if you're eating bigger fish, of course, increase mercury and where it's grown. There's farm raised, there's the sea caught fish. So we have to be very mindful of where we're getting our animal products. The less we can eat, the better for us. Now let's talk about dairy. So what's daring about dairy? A lot. So unfortunately, again, the milk, all sorts of things are happening with the foods that we eat and drink these days. How is the cow raised? Back to my original point, how is it raised? Is there hormone there? So any illness that they have, we're carrying it into our own bodies. And so this is what happens. The same thing, the same increased risk of IGF-1, which is linked to cancer and heart disease. Now, growing up, we always heard that milk is good for us. It helps to, help our bones get strong. But unfortunately, that's not completely true, because they found in countries where they didn't drink as much milk, they had less osteoporosis, which is thinning of the bone. And we found recently in studies that it actually promotes calcium loss. Now, not to talk of all the other things in terms of the hormone and all the other things and the sugar content that is in milk right now, the casein that is in milk, and when it mixes in with our protein, all sorts of things begin to happen. So we need to be very, very mindful about how much of it we're drinking. That's the Erin dropping off on live TV. But how much of it we're drinking, we have to be very mindful of it. Okay, so let's talk about the next thing. What's the problem with processed meat? Let me just get my Erin back. All right, so the next one we're going to look at is packaged and processed foods. A lot in here because it's unhealthy oil. So the trans fat, the saturated fats, all of that clogs up the artery. If you can imagine a sewage system where it's clogged and nothing can pass through, that's exactly what happens when we have unhealthy oils. All the seed oils like canola, what other oils do we have? Vegetable oils, all those oils are not good. They increase the risk of heart disease, which is the #1 reason for death, all over the world. So we need to be very mindful that all these processed and packaged foods have high content of unhealthy oils. They also have salt, 3-4 times the amount of salt, and sugar, particularly the high corn fructose sugar, high amounts, and that affects the microbiome, so the gut health. All of this destabilizes our health altogether. Salt, we already talked about salt, sugar, oils. Now, additives, there are a lot of additives, and the reason why the additives are there is because the food industry is really trying to get us hooked and addicted to these foods. So they're very smart. They keep us going on and on and on and over. I mean, have you ever opened a bag of chips and you don't just take one, even though that's your intention? I'm guilty. And you just keep eating and eating and eating. It's because it's rewarding to your brain. It stimulates the same center in your brain like cocaine does. So we need to be very, very mindful of all these things that we're eating. It's tons of chemicals, tons of flavors, preservatives that affect the gut microbiome. So how do I know all of this? There are tons of studies that have shown that the foods that we're eating right now, as long as they're processed, as long as they're packaged, as long as they have all these hormones in them, it's going to lead to chronic diseases. So that's why diet is the number one reason for lifestyle-related chronic diseases. Now, there was a recent study, we all know, coming out of the pandemic in 2020, at the very beginning, there was a study done and found out, and there are numerous studies, I'm just going to mention one. So plant-based diet have a 73 lower chance of severe illness. Same thing for pescatarian, and that just means people that just eat fish only, that has a 59 lower cases of chronic diseases. Now, on the other hand, the flip end, people that eat high protein diet, especially animal diet, low carbs, they have a higher increase of chronic diseases. And this is what we're trying to avoid altogether. Within our communities, we want to be healthy. We don't want to rely on medication. So we need to pay attention to our health. Now, let's move on to what's the solution then, you're asking, Dr. Babs. You've given us all this information. Now I want to know, what can I do to improve my health? How can I treat? How can I prevent? How can I even reverse chronic diseases? Well, I'll share with you how we can do it. So a whole food plant-based diet is really the way to go. And what does that mean? It means focusing more on God-made foods versus man-made foods, because man-made foods, as everything I've already said earlier on, is filled with additives, chemicals, preservatives. All of that affects our gut microbiome. And it's the healing effect that we need. The body needs food that it recognizes to be able to strive, right? To be able to generate the function that all the cells feeds on healthy foods, and it is able to move and generate and do all the things that we need it to do. So that is what a whole food plant-based diet. And what does it consist of? Definitely whole grains. So whole grains, it's a grain that has both its fiber and protein content intact. It hasn't been stripped, which we find in processed and packaged foods. So it has the 3-layer. So oats, barley, we're talking about brown rice, even if it's brown pasta, just make sure it's whole grain. All right, beans or legumes. Not many of us are eating a lot of that. And legumes is just a fancy word for lentils and all forms of beans, tons of fiber. It does have some carbs, but it has lots of fiber that keeps us full. Nuts and seeds, so important. So for our nuts, we're talking about almonds, walnuts, cashew, Brazil nuts. Very, very important to keep a healthy diet of flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds. All of this have tons of omega-3, which help with brain health and heart health. And of course, our fruits and veggies. So that is what makes up a whole food plant-based diet. So what does it do? How does it help you? How does it help me? How does it help our communities to be healthy? Definitely, the most important thing I will say is that it gets rid of those chronic diseases. Because as you can imagine, if our body is thriving, every aspect of our body, the cells, they're feeling the energy, they're feeling the nutrients, the minerals, everything that it needs to function as its best. It will give you all the energy you need. It will regulate your sugar appropriately. There are no spikes here and there that you get from processed foods. You will actually have normal blood pressure, normal cholesterol levels, that you're not relying on medication to take care of it. So important. These are all the benefits you get from predominantly focusing your meals on plants. So the power of plants. Of course, with all of that being said, you have weight wellness. So your weight is stabilized. You're not gaining weight. I mean, I am a sweet tooth, and I'm learning to eat more sweets that are God-made, right? Fruits and finding better ways of, or healthier ways of, and making them delicious, of course. I gained a lot of weight when I eat unhealthy carbs. So carbs is not the enemy. You just have to have the healthy carbs, which is the whole grains, is what I said. Another thing, definitely your gut health, that is so important. Did you know that your gut is responsible for some amount of hormones, such as serotonin, which is the mood stabilizer? And if your gut is not being fed the right foods, the bacteria that is supposed to help produce all these, build your immunity, help with the mood hormone, it's not going to be working right? So you're feeding into the bad bacteria. Your good bacteria is just like, you know what, I'm just going to chill right now. I'm not getting what I need, so I can't produce anything. So that's typically what happens. And of course, mental health. So when we eat right, our body functions the way it needs to function. So that's a lot that I've said today. The question is to you. I think I might have convinced you enough that let food be thy medicine and let medicine be thy food. We have to prioritize what we eat. We need to be mindful. And tomorrow I will definitely come back 8:30 to talk about each of those categories of a whole food plant-based diet and how we can make it practical. How can you incorporate it into your meals? I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day, so I'm not expecting that overnight you will change your eating habits. But even if you can slowly just add one more fruit, one more veggie, one more whole grains, that will make a whole lot of difference. And as you add those things and you feel fuller, then you can cut back on the unnecessary meals that you're eating that are not promoting good health. So I want you to come back again 8:30 tomorrow when we continue and we actually break down each of those components of a whole food plant-based diet. So thank you so much for being engaged and listening in and prioritizing your health, because that's what matters. Health is wealth. And for us to be able to function at our best and live at our finest, meaning we be staying whole, staying healthy, and being vibrant, we do need to prioritize our nutrition. So until next time when I see you, I want you to think about how you can make this happen, how you can reverse the current stir in your situation, in your life, in your health, in your home, to a balanced diet that is, again, God-made and not man-made. Know that you deserve to live at your finest because you are certainly worth it. All right, take care. See you tomorrow.